Welcome to Design Your Life in Business, the podcast for leaders by Bright Mind Consulting Group. We give you the necessary tools to help you become the architect of not just your business, but your life too. I'm your host, Jevon Wooden. Hey, what's going on, Brenden? Welcome to the Design Your Life in Business podcast. How are you, man?
Very good, Jevon. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited about this one. We're talking about something that's very important to everyone, right? Communication, speaking and communicating well. So I'm excited to get into this one, man. So first question that I ask everyone is, who are you? Who is Brenden Kumarasamy?
Yeah, for sure, Jevon. So me, Brenden, I'm born and raised in a city called Montreal, which is in Canada. My parents immigrated from Sri Lanka in the early 90s. So the way that I always like to describe myself is I was given the golden ticket of life. I wasn't born with a lot. My parents were factory workers, but I was given the most important key of life, which is being born in a first world country. So I definitely leveraged that to the success that I've had today or what I've done today. So what did I do? Obviously, when I was 12, I wanted to be an accountant. And then when I got to college, I thought that was what I was going to do with my life. I studied in numbers. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting. That's what I thought my life was going to be. But then in that journey, Jevon, I started competing in case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were like playing rugby or basketball or some other dangerous thing. You probably wouldn't see me playing. I did presentations competitively. That's how I learned how to speak. And then as I got older, I started coaching all the other students on how to communicate. And I accidentally got really good at speech coaching. So I started making YouTube videos on the subject, called it MasterTalk. And here we are today.
That's pretty awesome, man. So let's talk about a little bit of that. You've done a lot when it comes to communication. You started teaching others. Why do you feel that speaking skills and communicating properly is a skill that all business leaders need?
For sure. The way that I think about this, Jevon, is communication is an accelerant of dreams. Doesn't really matter what the dream is, whether it's to grow the business, grow your career, grow your family, show up better as a friend to the people around you, or just have a great life. Communication helps you accelerate anything that you want. So for example, if you're much better at communication, you'll close more deals in business. You'll be able to speak on stages and you'll get more leads into the business. If you're in your career, the best people at the top of any corporate ladder, most of them are exceptional communicators. So if you want to get to that level, communication is a prerequisite. And then the third piece is being a better parent for your children or the people around you. If you're always yelling at people all the time, you're not a great communicator, you don't listen properly, you're setting a bad example for your kids on how to communicate effectively with other people.
Yeah, I love that you said communication is an accelerant of dreams. That is powerfully and beautifully stated, Brenden. I love that because it's like a lot of people, especially now, it's really becoming a lost art to communicate effectively because we're always behind screens. We forget about the social aspect, the nonverbal cues, reading off other people's energies, reading the room, so to speak. So why is listening so important when it comes to communicating? I hear that people don't really talk about that side that much.
For sure, Jevon. Of course, we all know Aristotle's quote, which is, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for reasons that we listen twice as much as we speak. But you know the problem I've always had with listening, Jevon, is a lot of people talk about it, but they don't really give practical ideas on how to actually get better at it. So I'll give you one of them that I teach called the goals call. So the goals call is really simple. Pick one person in your network and sit them down on a one-on-one call for 45 minutes. And then what you do during that call is 3 main things. Number one is you begin the call by saying, you don't have to do this, but let's say, Jevon, let's say I'm doing it with you. I'll say, okay, Jevon, take 3 minutes right now and write down what are your top 3 goals for the year and why are those goals important to you. So then you take 3 minutes, write those goals down. Why are those important to you? And then you start telling me, okay, Brenden, this is what my goals are. It could be getting better at fitness. It could be growing the business. It could be showing a better for the family. And then what I do after that's done is I restate everything that you said. Hey, Jevon, just want to make sure I got everything right. Boom, boom, boom. These are the 3 goals. This is why it's important to you. Did I miss anything? Anything else you want to add? And then I throw it back to you. And then you add a couple of other things. And then for the remainder of the call, you are not allowed to give advice. So you're not allowed to coach that person. The only thing you're allowed to do, Jevon, for the rest of those 42 minutes is you're allowed to ask clarifying questions around their goals and restating. That's it. So let's say we continue this exercise. I'll say, okay, Jevon, you said one of your goals was to grow the business. How much is the business doing now? How much would you like it to do next year? What are some of the components that comprise your revenues? So you're just asking questions and you're restating. If you do that for 45 minutes with 10 different people, your listening skills will skyrocket.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that sounds like a sales call to me. You just restating and asking questions, and then they're like, "You get me," right? That's what I always tell my folks. Like, probably that's going to help everyone who does sales, which is probably everyone who's listening, right? So that's the key.
Yeah, small caveat to that. So I like what you said. You're right. That's what makes you successful in sales. But I'm really talking about doing this with your mother, doing this with your nephew, doing this with people in your life that you really love. There's no offer at the end. And I know that's not what you meant either. But the reason I mean it this way is for us, we take it for granted, Jevon, because me and you invest a lot of money into ourselves. We have a ton of coaches. So we'd probably do this work all the time. But when you do this with like a best friend who's not really into personal growth, and you ask them these questions, it's really transformational because they go, wow, Jevon, no one's really asked me these questions this year. No one's really pushed me to start reflecting. And you're not giving them any advice. Let's say somebody wants to lose weight. You go like, how are you measuring that? And they go, I never really thought about that. And they kind of come to their own conclusions. So I think it's more about you're creating a lot of magic in people's lives. And that's what sales is at the end of the day. But that's really the key.
Absolutely. It's the essence of coaching, really asking powerful questions and getting people to come to their own understanding, right? To dig a little deeper. So that's the beauty of it. That's probably why you're so good at coaching others to be better speakers, because you ask those questions and it cause that introspection. So there's a lot of people who are listening right now. A lot of designers are listening. They're saying, you know what? I run a multi-million-dollar organization. I do well for myself, but I still feel like I'm not that good at communicating. What would you say to them? How can they become better communicators?
For sure, Jevon. So for me, communication is like juggling 18 balls at the same time. So one of those balls is body language. One of those balls is storytelling. One of those balls is facial expressions, listening, how to tell a story. And it can get really confusing really quickly. So for me, the question has always been, what are the 3 easiest balls to juggle? Because if we can juggle those balls, it becomes really easy to master communication over time. Let's go through them. Ball number 1, the random word exercise. Pick a word like xylophone, like turnip, like bag, like home, just a random word, and create a 60-second presentation out of thin air about the word. This serves 2 main purposes for the specific demographic you mentioned. Number 1 is it helps you deal with uncertainty. Doesn't matter what success you have in business, there's always uncertainty. There's always something you don't really think about or approach or see as an opportunity. So it's all about making those opportunities find success. And a lot of us can't really make small talk. We go to a cocktail and meet somebody new, and we don't really know what to talk about. So that's number 1. Number 2 is if you can make sense out of nonsense, you could make sense out of anything. So if you talk about avocado toast, Jevon, for 45 seconds, you could talk about your subject matter expertise any day of the week. And that's really the key. So spend 5 minutes every day doing the random word exercise. And to make this even easier and to implement for the people you mentioned, if it's multi-7-figure CEOs, literally do this with your teams. So before you start a meeting with your team, just do a random word exercise. Spend 10 minutes, go everybody do one, and then start the meeting. If you do it that way, everyone gets practice, including you, and you get much better at it.
Now, I love that, man. I joined Toastmasters a while back, and that was something that really helped me to become a better speaker was those random word exercises and having to come up with something on the spot, right? Them counting my words that I wasn't supposed to say, my ums and my ahs, my fillers. So I love that exercise, Brenden. Brenden, what's some other tips that you would give? So let's give a scenario. Say someone just has a fear. They're just so afraid of speaking public. They can't even get up in front. They feel like their knees are shaking. They feel like they get that butterfly feeling and they just freeze. Like if y'all have ever seen 8 Mile, like B-Rabbit, when he just froze on stage. How does someone get over that type of fear?
For sure, Jevon. So there's 2 parts to that. The first part is acknowledging that the fear is normal. There's so many things in our life that we're scared of that we did anyways. So what I encourage, especially if we're talking to multi-million-dollar CEOs, take 5 minutes to just reflect on what's every accomplishment you've achieved that you're proud of. Building the business could be one, starting it, quitting your day job to pursue it full time, applying for college, getting your first job, asking somebody on a date, getting married, having children. Do any of those things. have zero fear attached to them, Jevon? And the answer is, of course not. Everything that we're proud of, everything that we've accomplished in our life, there's some fear. So why do we do it anyway? We do it because the motivation is greater than the fear. Or rather, the fear of being broke far exceeds the fear of interviewing for a job, so you do it anyways. The fear of being alone, when you get old enough anyways, far exceeds the fear of asking somebody out on a date. So you do it anyways. But we don't apply that logic to communication. We literally apply that logic for every skill in the world except communication, where we go, oh, I'm scared, so I'm just going to sit at home and do nothing. Well, how are you supposed to get better? Right? So that's really the key, is find a motivation greater than the fear. That's why I ask people all the time, how would your life change if you were an exceptional communicator? How would your life change if you were an exceptional communicator? Really think about that question, because for all of us, the answer is different. For me, it might be growing the business. For you, it might be growing your coaching practice, being a better host on the podcast, though you're already awesome, but you know what I mean. Then somebody else might say, I want to be a better father for my kids. I want to be a better mother for my children. We all have different reasons why communication matters to us. And when you find that reason, it's going to be a lot easier for you to do the random word exercise every day.
Absolutely. No, I love that, man. That's one of my favorites. You remind me. I like to say, find your reasons to be great instead of your excuses to be mediocre, because that reason has to be a lot stronger, right? Than the reason or rationale that you're giving yourself for staying home or not asking that person out and or not getting on that stage, right? Spreading your message. So I love that, what you just said, man. Giving some jewels, giving some gems. I hope y'all go back and listen to this and just bring out your notebook if you haven't already. Make sure y'all download the transcripts, because Brenden is talking right now. So another question, when it comes to communicating, we don't realize that we need to do it in so many different situations for many of us. One of those situations, especially for my entrepreneurs and business leaders who are listening, is networking. A lot of people fail at this. So what do you recommend when someone goes in, they know they're going to have to talk? How do you recommend they just knock it out the park when it comes to networking?
Right. So I take a very different frame to networking than most people, Jevon, which is this. Let's play a scenario. Let's say you meet somebody new every few days, which is rare. Most people don't do that. But let's say you meet somebody new every 2 to 3 days. In a year, you'll meet 100 people. And if you do that for 50 years, you'll meet 5,000 people. So in the sea of 8 billion lives, 8 billion people who are alive, you only get to talk to 5,000 people. So for me, the question has rather been, who do you want those 5,000 people to be? And when you start asking yourself that question, the way that you approach networking changes drastically from, how do I go to a cocktail and get everyone to like me, to, is this cocktail a good use of my limited time on earth? So here's the strategy, really simple. I call it the value list. So the value list is make a list of the top 5 people in your network that you already have a relationship with, that are amazing, that are super generous, that are always out there to help you. It could be a family member. Ideally, avoid family because they might not have great introductions for you. So just people you met in the business world, people in general, or a buddy from college. Make a list of those 5 people and ask yourself a simple question, Jevon. What have you done for them lately? And what you'll find is you haven't done anything for them. And that's really the mistake a lot of us make with networking, is we find the prize. We find the incredible person, but we take them for granted. It's like you meet the love of your life and you take them for granted. You meet your best business partner and you take them for granted. And that's the problem. Get your best clients and you take them for granted. That's the problem. So instead, what you want to do is you go back to those 5 people. You add a crap ton of value to them. You introduce them to each other. That's an easy thing to do. Those 5 people probably don't know each other. If you want introductions, introduce them to each other first. Do the goals call that we talked about today. Sit them all down, ask them what their goals are, what their priorities are, and send them a video message on their birthday. And then after you do all of that for them, then you ask them who are the best people in your network, and they'll make you introduction. That's the most effective way to network, and that nobody else does.
Yeah, love that. And one of the things I like to do is because this closes all time, right? I'll say, hey, I was reading this article or I watched this webinar, or I just created that and I thought about you. Check this out. I hope you find it as helpful as I did. And people love that, right? They love it. They're like, oh, thanks for thinking of me. This is great. I needed this. How did you know? And it's just that personal touch that is just missing. We're all on LinkedIn and Facebook and all these getting those cold messages that are just a wall of text. And you're like, what the heck? I've never even asked for this. Why are you sending me this? I'm not going to read this. Right. So I love that personal touch you just added, Brenden. Like, go to people you already know. Go check them out. They're 5 great, fantastic people. Why not show them some love? Right? Why not give them love? Cultivate those relationships. I like that because you even made me think like, who are my 5? Who are my top 5 people? So thank you for that. See, that's why I do this show, man. Talk to people like you who just spark a different mindset, mind state, and just really, really get us back to the basics, man. So you have a YouTube channel, right? It's called MasterTalk, right? That you go over a ton of different just things when it comes to public speaking. If you were to look at your catalog, what would be the top tips you feel like you've given so far on that? Maybe just 3 to 5.
For sure, Jevon. So let's go back to our easy threes, right? So we talked about ball number 1, which is the random word exercise. So now let's jump into ball number 2 and number 3. So ball number 2 is the question drill. We get asked questions all the time in our businesses, on sales calls, at networking cocktails, at work from our employees, or even school or on a podcast like this. But most of us suck at answering questions. I'll give you an example with me. When I started MasterTalk, this was probably 4 years ago. I've been coaching for 8 now, but when I started like the business, the YouTube, and I started guesting on shows, I was horrible, man. I remember some guy asked me, "Hey, Brenden, where does the fear of communication come from?" I was like, I don't know, dude. Los Angeles? Like New York City? You tell me. So what did I do differently? Every single day, Jamal, for 5 minutes, I answered one question that I thought the world would ask me about my expertise, my products, and my services. So day 1 was, what tips do you have for introverts on speaking? Day 2 was, how do you overcome your fear of speaking? Day 3 is, what's 3 easy exercises we could work on every single day? But if you do that for a year, Javon, 5 minutes a day, that's all I ask, you'll have answered 365 questions about your industry. You'll be bulletproof, right? Just most people aren't willing to put in the time. It doesn't even take that much time. And that's why I found success. And then the third ball is the video message. Just make a list of 3 people you love in your life. Mom, dad, brother, sister, nephew, best client, best podcast host, and send them a 20-second, not a 20-minute, a 20-second video message to just say how much you appreciate having them in your life. And there's only one rule. And the rule is you're not allowed retaking the video. And if you do that every single day with 3 videos, you'll be pretty good at this pretty quickly.
Nah, I love it, man. No, that's the best way to get this. Like, you really have no excuse not to. If you consider yourself an expert on the topic or a subject, it forces you to research if you don't know what to talk about, right? And then with the advent of AI, you can kind of be like, hey, what should I talk about? What's the top questions that are being asked in my industry? So it makes it easy. But I like that, man. I like 5 minutes a day just recording about a subject line in your topic. And one of the easier things to do is you can create content buckets that you know that you want to talk about and then just pull from notes, right? I've used 5 content buckets, and that way I know I'm always going to be talking about something pertaining to that. And then if you use Brendan's tip, man, you just would never run out of content. So now you'd be seen as a thought leader. Now you'd be on podcasts and doing the thing like Brendan's doing with speaking. It's just, I love that, man. So another question I'm sure that a lot of the listeners are wondering when it comes to communicating, right? Besides doing it, how else do I just become better? Like, what else would Brenden say to one of his students that's really struggling with grasping the concept of being a good communicator?
Absolutely, which brings me to ball number 4, Jevon. Really simple. There's only one takeaway you get from this entire podcast. It's this. The best way to speak is to speak. So there's only one thing people do today. It's book 15 minutes in your calendar every single day to do the easy threes. 15 minutes. 5 minutes to do the random word exercise 3 to 5 times. Pick 3 to 5 words. Cloth, doorknob, yoga mat, and that's it. Do that for 60 seconds each. Then question drill. Pick one question from your list of questions. Either you come up with the questions yourself, or if you're a business owner, be more efficient about it. Go to your clients and go, what are the top 25 questions you got about me in the business? And you write all the questions down. You don't have to think about it. Like, I'm not thinking about the questions I'm answering today. You're coming up with the questions. All I have to do is answer them. And you just take one of them every day and you answer them. And number 3 is just pick 3 people at random. They could be people you know, or you go on Facebook, you see whose birthday it is today, and you just send them a birthday video message. Who cares who they are? It'll make their day. And if you just do that every single day for 30 days, I have not met a single human being who has been able to do just those three things, Jevon, consistently for 30 days or even a week. So if you just do that, you'll be better than 99% of your industry.
Awesome. So I got to ask you the question, man, because you mentioned doing this on the spot talk, but random word. Can I put you on the spot just for 60 seconds? So random word, he's going to do it on the spot. So designers, get ready. You're going to watch this on the spot. So can I pick the word or you get to pick the word?
No. You pick the word. Absolutely. But what I'll do, just because you're mentioning it, I want you to make it challenging. So don't say something like empowerment or motivation or coffee, something, or else it'll be too easy for me. So pick something completely random.
Got you. How about supercalifragilisticexpialidocious?
Absolutely. Ever since I was a kid, I love Disney movies, Jevon. Mulan, Dalmatians 101, and of course, the illustrious Mary Poppins. I remember when I first heard the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and I couldn't know how to pronounce it because I was a 5-year-old kid. And I looked at Mary Poppins and I looked at my mom and I said, is that even a word in the English language? But you know what I appreciated the most about Mary Poppins, Jevon? And that's the lesson I got, is she wasn't afraid to be herself. Whether it was the way that she dressed her weird umbrella or the words that she used, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, she wasn't afraid to be her authentic self. Why can't we all as a society be a little bit more like Mary Poppins, Jevon? Not being afraid to say weird words or take weird actions, whether it's to be on a podcast, whether it's to start a business, whether it's to follow our dream. So I ask all of you in your life, what is that supercalifragilisticexpialidocious moment that you have yet to seize? Because I encourage you, if you take that first step towards that insanity, that weirdness that is you, you will unlock a uniqueness that is so pure as the incredible Mary Poppins. There you go, random verdicts.
Wow. That was pretty awesome, man. That was pretty, see how good you can get at this? Like, talk about an expert. The name MasterTalk definitely fits you, Brenden. That was amazing, man. Right on the spot. There was no planning, no point. I wanted to just let y'all see what it means to be an expert in your craft when it comes to communicating. So thank you for doing that, Brenda. All right. So we're going to come to the by design segment where I ask every guest the same 3 questions. I know you're ready because you just made a speech about supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. First question, Brittany. What has been the hardest part about designing a life and business you don't need a vacation from?
What has been the hardest part? For me personally, Jevon, I would say to find my passion. A lot of us, we don't really know what it is. That's what I argue the problem is. It's not really that we know it or we're not pursuing it. I think that's 20% of the people. But most of it is like, in my case, I didn't really know MasterTalk was going to be my passion. I thought I was just going to be an executive at IBM. But then through a series of experimentation and trying different things, I realized through a lot of inner work that MasterTalk ended up being my baby. So that was the biggest challenge on getting there. And the way you overcome it, in my opinion, although we could have a whole podcast just on that topic, is to follow Gay Hendricks' genius model, which is there's kind of 4 quadrants of genius. The first one is your zone of incompetence, competence, excellence, and genius. So in my case, find your zone of excellence, something you're really, really good at that you might not necessarily like, but you get paid money to do. Find that first, like be an accountant, make money, save a bunch of money, and then you have a bunch of time to figure out what your zone of genius is. That's the advice.
Love that, man. Number 2, what is the best lesson you've learned on your entrepreneurial journey?
The best lesson I've learned is be insane or be the same. If you want to be like everyone else, that's totally fine. But if you want to make a difference in the world, you want to do something special with your life, you need to realize that most of the people who do something special are often cuckoo in the head. Don't you find it odd, Jevon, that you're talking to a kid that when he was 22 years old started a YouTube channel, not on prank videos, not on music, not to be the next Justin Bieber, but on executive communication tips. And then he went on to coach all of these high level CEOs, but he still lives in his mother's basement. He owns a nice car, but he's too scared to drive it. So his sister drives the Toyota for him. Because for me, a Toyota 2013 is a pretty high end car, considering I used to have a 97 Camry. And I'm in the top 1% of all listeners on Spotify for Justin Bieber. How does any of this make sense? And that, my friend, is the point. When every decision in your life makes sense to the only person that it should, which is you, they're probably making the right decisions in life. So be insane or be the same.
I love it. Like Steve Jobs said, here's to the crazy ones. right? Those are the change makers. So you are spot on with that. The last question is, what are 3 tools or tips that you would recommend when scaling a business?
I would say number 1 is a notepad on your phone. I know it sounds really simplistic, but I'm shocked at how little business owners spend time reflecting and just documenting their process, what's working, what's not working. So I use my notepad for everything and it helps me sort through. So I have like a notepad that says like how to spend my next 100,000 in order. So that way if an emotional purchase comes my way, I immediately compare it to that list so I don't make stupid decisions with my money. So I look at the notepad and I go, oh no, that's way more important to put money into. This is just a distraction. And I've saved a ton of money just by having a notepad with these types of tabs. So that's tool number 1. Tool number 2 is ask yourself a difficult question every single day of your life. So day 1, ask yourself, if you could only accomplish 3 things in your life, what would you want to accomplish and why? I call them 80-20 questions. We all know the 80-20 principle, right? What are 20% of the action that drives 80% of result? So Brendan's spin on the question is, what are 20% of the questions that we can ask ourselves that give us 80% of one's clarity? Because the more clarity you have in your vision, that is the one thing as an entrepreneur you have to work on for the rest of your life. Even the most successful people in business suck at vision, even if they have a great vision. Because what happens is then they accomplish it and they don't know what to do after, right? That's why Patrick Bet-David wrote a good book on this called Your Next 5 Moves. You have to always be thinking about your next 5 moves. So that's the second tip. Write a question every day. And the third tool that I would give is spend an unhealthy amount of time with the best clients that you're selling your product or service to. So for example, for me, and that's really what separated me at the end of the day, Jevon, is the reason I've done 500 interviews is not because I'm getting a lot of business from these conversations. It's because I'm learning something from the host that I hadn't considered in my thought process before. And that's why, because I do so many of these interviews, it's really just to keep me sharp. And I'm always listening. Like, what does Jevon care about my expertise? And why does he care about it for his audience? So then through these interviews, I gain more insights. And that applies to the clients that I speak to. They're my buddies. I hang out with them. And that's how I get better insights to help me outcompete the market.
I love that, man. Always learning, always growing. That's for sure. Well, it's been a pleasure and an honor. I'm glad this was one of those 500 because you've been awesome, Brenden. So how can people connect with you, man? You've clearly proven your mettle at Communicator.
For sure, man. And thanks for having me on the show. 2 ways to keep in touch. The first one is the YouTube channel. Just type MasterTalk in one word and you'll have access to hundreds of free videos on how to speak. And the second way to keep in touch is to join one of my free communication workshops. So I run a free online workshop over Zoom every 2 weeks. It's live, it's interactive, and I facilitate it. So if you want to jump on that free call, just go to rockstarcommunicator.com.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. And it's always a pleasure speaking with you. I look forward to seeing what you have coming up, Brenden. Keep us in there.
Likewise, brother. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Design Your Life in Business, the podcast for leaders, is brought to you by Bright Mind Consulting Group. To find out more about Bright Mind Consulting Group and how you can become the best leader possible, visit brightmindconsultinggroup.com. Make sure you search for Design Your Life in Business on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Bright Mind Consulting Group, we cannot thank you enough for listening.